as kind of streamlining the process.
And as Alan said, I mean, if you're going to have a successful public-private partnership, you need to have an internal governance that's nimble. You had clearly defined roles. Maybe you have one that's more of an operating partner, makes the quick day-to-day decisions. You have another partner that might be contributing significant assets or financial support, which would have a different role of periodic review of performance and things like that. That's how you try to avoid, as you were saying, too many iterations in the decision process so that you can move forward.
One of the models that I'm familiar with, it's not necessarily a public-private partnership, but it's something referred to as a strategic alliance, where there's a long-term relationship between the utility and a service provider. And some of the companies that have used this model have said one of the specific benefits is their ability to quickly get in place new technologies, because they set in place incentives that reward both the service provider and the utility for the implementation of best practices and new technologies. And they specifically structure the relationship in a way that encourages both organizations to support that.
So therefore, does it have to be written in the initial agreement between the parties, how that would work, or does it have to be done through a legislation to allow that process to move forward?
Depends on how your governance structure is for the public enterprise, but in GA's case, it would not require legislation, require board approval, which would be for any private company, that'd be the same thing. But to answer your question more specifically, when you get to the operating agreement, you need to be pretty explicit about that. There's a joint development agreement where you're trying to develop the business and go forward, where you can be a little bit looser about that and figure out what you each want to do on an operating basis once you get closer to getting into operations.
So each one that you've been involved with, I guess, is structured differently depending on, or are they structured similarly throughout the different? You're in Jacksonville, right?
Yes,
so
yeah.
Do you think that's structured similarly to the other ones throughout the country?
I would say that say they probably are unique. It's still an evolving delivery methods is an evolving and iterative process, and I would say it's probably unique and building upon the successes and learning from the failures of previous ones.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you very much. I'm sure we will reach out and have a little further discussion, but right now you need to figure out a way to get to the airport.
Yeah. Mr. President, is there an Amtrak? I understand. No,
there's actually a train that can take you to the airport, but you know.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll have, if we're trying to move this around a little bit, can we have the PGW's Local 686, and then we'll have, I guess we can bring you, Craig, Mr. White, back up after. Or you got enough in? All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Yeah, ma'am, I said earlier, and thank you for being here, that given the level of response to this particular hearing, we scheduled it for 2 days because we knew there would be no way that we would be able to get everybody on the first day, particularly since we only had a half a day. We're trying to accommodate as many people as possible on the first day, but we're just not going to be able to do that. It's up to the members of the body, but there will be, I'm assuming there will be continued conversation. In what format, I'm not really sure. Could be on continuation of this, or it could be on a bill. I mean, you know, it's a very important issue and everybody's concerned, and we're just trying to.
We're only talking about using more and more fossil fuels
All right. Right. I understand, ma'am. I can't, I mean, you know. I understand. I'm sorry. I didn't see you to. Thank you. Yeah. Guys, we're going to take a break, yes, sir.
Take a break?
The stenographer break. Be right back. We're going to start back up. Have your attention, please. Excuse me. We're going to start. Folks, hello, 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 hello. We're going to start. That's what I'm talking about.
Good job, Bill.
Thank you, Deputy. Got to get you some desk gloves. Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. Just state your name for the record. Please proceed.
Yes, first of all, I'd just like to say I'm Keith Holmes. I'm president of Gas Workers Local 686, represent 1,140 employees at PGW. Next to me on my right's Jim Runkle. He's the union attorney. To my left here is Mike Weiler. He's the financial secretary of the union. And behind me is Jim Lennox. He is the treasurer of the union. I'd just like to start by saying thanks for having the union be part of this process. As everybody knows, when the administration announced the sale or potential sale of PGW, they basically shut the union out of the whole process. And it's refreshing to know that there are people in city government that actually care about what the workers think and how it would affect the workers. So I want to thank council. I agree with your decision not to support a sale of PGW to UIL. Over the last 11 years, I just want to give you a little history thing since I've been president. Over the last 11 years, this union's made big sacrifices to try and help PGW become the success it is today. 2003, I took over as president of the union, and one of the first calls I made was to Craig White, and I said, look, Craig, things aren't going good the way it is. The relations with management in the union were terrible. The union was trustee prior to that, and I said, look, I like to do things different. I like to try and move the company forward and make it a successful thing instead of a potential drain on the city. And at that time, we entered into some things called interest-based negotiations, so we both understood each other's interest. And, you know, most union leaders wouldn't take that risk because it's easier just to say no and not be part of the solution than it is to actually step up and be part of a solution. And to Craig's credit, him and Tom Knudsen at the time agreed to do it. And we brought some people in, and the leadership of the company and the leadership of the union went through some formal training, and we started to understand that we can't move forward unless we're both there together and we're partners. But with that comes some pain for the union. And over that period of time, the union, we redid our job descriptions. We put standards in play for our call center. At the contract at the time, we were only collecting 86 cents on the dollar. We took 0 raises for a few years, so our benefits and our pension could stay intact. And over time, the other thing the union did is we went to Harrisburg, and we were the only union in the state to testify for the collection effort for the company. We were the only one to step forward for PGW. And we knew how important the collection effort was to turn it around. And As everybody knows, the collection went from 86 cents to 98 cents on the dollar. And, our call center, that's improved, twofold. It's been unbelievable, the improvements. And one thing people don't understand, the commitment. I just stand in front of my members, 10 to 15 people at a time, and tell them why we were going to change the job description and why we're changing the work standards in there. Because, look, if we continue the path we're down, we won't have jobs. So, for me to stand there and say, look, we need to improve. You need to have less downtime. You need to answer so many calls an hour. We went with the company to PSC&G up in Central Jersey, and we looked at their call center, and we brought some people in from our national union, and we were able to make these changes. But the point I want to bring up is, after the union members, not Keith Holmes, the union members made these sacrifices, and we tried to make this company a better place, our reward 11 years down the road is we're going to sell the company, and we don't really care if you're protected. We don't care. There's no protections in the there's minimal protections in the asset purchase agreement. I am so tired of hearing our pensions are protected. I challenge anyone to show me in the asset purchase agreement where a PGW pension's protected. It's protected to May 15 of 15. So a guy that worked his whole career after this May could lose 35 to 40% of his pension, and we're supposed to be in favor of a sale. That's just not acceptable. There's no third-party rights in the asset purchase agreement. That's not acceptable. Our contract's up May 15 of 15. So the first thing I have to do is negotiate a contract with somebody I've been arguing with over the last year. And the only reason why we've been arguing is because they don't want to meet with us. They'll meet with everybody else except the leadership of Local 686 because they're doing everything possible to try and sell this company on the back of my workers, and that's not going to happen. And thank God we have City Council to stand up and protect the union people. Over time, we've really worked hard, and we've taken less. We make $6 an hour on the average less than what a private sector gas worker makes. So at the end of the day, did anybody give me my pension and health care? No. I paid for it over that 30 years by taking less. And the reward we get is we're going to sell you. So, look, we could sit here and we could discuss it, and I will entertain any questions council would have, but I urge council, don't change. Let me tell you something. It's very popular in the city of Philadelphia, the PGWs not being sold. The only people who want this sold are the people that are going to personally benefit from it. Big business wants it sold. What's that going to do for the poor? What's it going to do for the seniors, and what's it going to do for the workers at PGW? If you look in the asset purchase agreement, they said, well, we can't lay you off for 3 years, but they could cut our workforce from 1,600 to 1,350 employees. And it's already been publicly stated by them they're going to eliminate back office functions. They're going to eliminate HR. They're going to eliminate legal. They're going to do finance. Everyone's talking about how profitable this sale is, but no one sits down with the union of Local 686 and tells us how it's going to benefit my employees. I haven't heard anything about job growth in Local 686. We have 1,600 employees, 1,140 are union, 95% of them live in this city, vote in the city, pay taxes in the city, and are PGW customers. So, again, I just want to thank council. And I hope and pray that, at the end of the day, you hold strong and don't let anyone convince you that a sale of PGW is a good thing, because it's not for the workers and it's not for the customers.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Say your name for the record.
Yes, James Runkle, and I'm counsel to UWA Local 686. I just wanted to say one thing, because sometimes this gets a little muddled. And some people say, oh, well, they haven't offered you the right deal yet. That's a shame. Why don't they just offer you the right deal? The point is, there isn't a right deal. It's about privatizing municipal jobs. It's not about oh, give a 2-year extension to your contract or a 3-year extension of your contract, and then you can get slaughtered in 2 or 3 years. It's not about some temporary reprieve. This is about privatizing 1,140 union jobs. And once they're gone, they're not going to come back. This is an industry. My law firm represents a number of unions in the oil, in the utility industry. And when I go in and prep a case, I have to ask them who the employer is now, because I can't remember because it churns so much in the industry. There is a takeover, a merger, an affiliation, a disaffiliation every couple years. And so even if there were some temporary reprieve, if UIL is bought, and they've been listed as recently as June as a major takeover target in the utility industry, nobody, an Exelon or someone that buys them, isn't going to honor whatever they honored for those 2 years. Moreover, they've made clear that they have a different set of benefits, a different set of obligations everywhere else in their company that they're not willing to change here. So there's no way they could satisfy Local 686. We're opposed to privatization, period. The laws are different. You've had labor peace here because of this partnership for 20 years in the gas industry. If anybody remembers back, I know Councilwoman Tasco does, and others, to the late 80s, it was strike after strike after strike. PARA prohibits that for public sector workers since 1993. You haven't had that now. God forbid, this is an industry where we don't want labor strife. This is an industry that is safety sensitive, that we don't need any interruption in quality gas service and supply. So there are myriad reasons why privatization is just bad. So I just wanted to reiterate what Keith said. This isn't about the right deal. The right deal is keeping this municipal, period.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Good evening, gentlemen. President Clark and members of council had multiple reasons why we thought it appropriate to have this discussion in this way. And so one of the purposes, which is to explore this concept called Energy Hub, we know that Philadelphia has the opportunity to develop an energy hub to strengthen access to lower price gases, supplies, and promote sustainability. What role, and to follow up on your legitimate concern and interest to ensure jobs going forward, what role might Local 686 play in supporting programs to develop Philadelphia's energy workforce going forward for both PGW and
We've spent a lot of time on that, and those kind of arrangements are certainly possible, so long as all of the jobs remain municipal. You hear Energy Hub, I think it needs to be fleshed out of what it is and how it would work. But we're not opposed to it so long as all the jobs remain municipal. I mean, look, we've had conversations, he and I, with the president of the AFL-CIO, Richard Trumka in Washington, to talk about that. They and their investors, Ulico, their sort of investment arm, is very into making investments in repairing and expanding infrastructure like this. So, labor actually, just like, the union has been a partner turning PGW around, labor could be a partner in expanding that base, but only, and Mr. Trump has said this, only if the local is satisfied, the jobs remain municipal. So,
speak to the type of training that currently exists within your organization to get young people, in particular, in the pipeline for opportunities at PGW.
Well, first of all, PGW has a state-of-the-art training facility down in the Patsy Young plant. And, unfortunately, the union doesn't train the employees, PGW does. But I would say, over time, they go down to the facility. They go through a few-week course in training, and then usually what they do is when they go out, they'll also receive additional training out in the street with whatever foreman or whatever they're in that gang.
And you say that's administered by PGW?
Through PGW, yes.
Okay. Well, then the follow-up questions would be more appropriate for PGW. The last question is, one of the ideas talked about in the concentric report for PGW's future is a possible public-private partnership or some other arrangement. What is, and I've heard your view, but to this question, what is 686's view on PGW entering on that idea, entering into a joint venture to further promote business and/or opportunity going forward?
It's kind of the same answer.
Yeah, I think that so long as the jobs are municipal, I mean, look, we'd like to not lose jobs. We're going to lose jobs if UIL sale goes through, period. They've said that. So we'd like to gain jobs. So if there's a way to gain jobs, remain municipal, I think we're all in favor of it. And just one other point is sort of an aside, I'm sorry, but it's related to your question on training. This is not some cookie cutter training thing. This is working on live gas. So this isn't, I'm going to send you to a course for 8 weeks and now you're going to go work on live gas throughout the city of Philadelphia. This is especially critical now because of the uncertainty of the sale. You have 250 operating department employees poised to retire without penalty. They're eligible to retire. They've chosen to stay so far. There's the uncertainty with the sale.
So let me follow these numbers. X number are scaled or slated to retire before May 2015?
They are eligible to retire right now.
I see.
And by the end of this year.
Okay.
And a large percentage of them have indicated they might because of the uncertainties with sale.
see.
You can't replace a 30-year distribution foreman with somebody who just got trained for a matter of weeks or months or frankly years. You will never be able to replace that experience, and that is the single most critical factor to keeping Philadelphia safe from gas explosions.
Yeah.
And there are this many senior people ready to roll, and if this process goes on with uncertainty past the end of the year, there may be no way to get them back. So it's important to finish this sooner rather than later so that those skilled employees stay employees and can ensure the safe delivery of gas in the city.
There's 400 total right now that can retire, and 260 are in the operating departments, 250, and I believe 105 already signed their papers that they're going to leave at the end of the year.
But they can still pull their papers.
They could still pull them back. They have about a 2-week period, so that's why it's so important that, the process ends because, like I said, people work their whole life and they're afraid they're going to lose everything at the tail end. So people are running out the door. They might be 50, 51 years old. They don't want to go, but it's the safest thing for them.
Sure. I think I heard the bell ring, didn't I? Didn't I? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, if you haven't
A quick follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, hearing those numbers, I can only imagine it's quite scary being 51 and forced to make a decision when, just in terms of your own personal circumstances, may not be prepared to deal with that decision. So given that prospect, well, first of all, is it fair to say this is unprecedented? I mean, what you're experiencing in terms of the number of retirees looking to transition, is it unprecedented?
Yeah, I would say it is, and it's all being done based on the sale process. I mean,
Gotcha.
I'm 50 years old with 31 years, and, I'll be honest, if I wasn't president of the union, I'd be retiring because, there's just too much uncertainty. But obviously in the position I'm in, that option doesn't exist for me, but it exists for, and people ask me, and I say, look, people, they need to know, and it's getting so close, you got to give 30 days notice, I believe it is, to pull your papers. So if you sign your papers and you hit that date, you're done. But it is unprecedented. It's a shame because there's a lot of good talent. And we're not talking about people that are, worked 40 years and they're 65 years old and it's time to move on. You're talking a lot of people in their young 50s that still have a lot of good years of service left that are being forced out the door.
So my last question is, given that reality and the way you just framed it, have you had time to think about building a bench? I mean, is building a bench even a possibility of young people who are trained and ready to, not being totally unfamiliar with the way it operates in organization?
Then again, I think the sale process kind of dictates that because the UIL might have some say in, you know, things going forward because of the asset purchase agreement, so you can't make major changes.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, that's a question for Craig White. Could he just hire, you know, anticipating 250 employees leaving, could he go out and start to hire? I know they have been hiring a lot of young people, you know, over the last year or two, and they have been building the force up, trying to replace people. But like you said, you know, it's tough on a guy or a woman that comes in and you work a couple years and you're being pushed into positions of that you might not have got. You might not have got there for 10 years. You're getting there in 5 years based on the amount of people retiring.
I think the company has expressed concern about the number of people leaving. They're not hiding that. They're not disagreeing with us about that. But you just can't replace 30 years of experience with someone who's just going through the training. You can't have a distribution worker do the job of an experienced foreman or operator. So,
Agreed, you can't do that at any profession. Thank you very, very, very much for your testimony, gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have more a statement, but I'd certainly welcome your reaction. And so I'm sorry to say, but I've heard two different things that I don't think are true, me personally. One is that a sale could only be good. We should sell it because there's nothing, but it could only be good. On the other hand, I don't believe that a sale could only be bad. I think it depends on what the sale is. I would say, for example, that when the Sunoco refinery closed, PES came in. I think those are very good jobs. There's just $2.5 billion to Sunoco Logistics. Are you saying that regardless of the sale, no matter what the investment, no matter the investment into energy growth and whatnot, that would bring the money to develop and create new jobs, that you would not be for that deal because you must have municipal workers rather than union jobs at a private facility?
Yeah, I think that the answer is yes to that, because, see, the sales you're talking about are private to private. They're not municipal to private. So there's no change in the law. Municipal law, an employer can't unilaterally implement. There can't be the labor strife unless the union strikes out. There can be by unilateral implementation. So the law is far less favorable. If I'm already private sector, there's no change. It's one private sector employer to another. Here I'm losing a couple really important things. I'm losing the protections that state law gives me that private sector, federal labor law doesn't give me. I'm losing a body like this to determine whether my pension's going to change or whether it should be sold, and I'm replacing that with a board of directors. I'm not criticizing private capital generally here, but they're out to make a profit. It's shareholder value. That's just the way capitalism is, right? So they aren't, and history would demonstrate in the private sector when Exelon takes over UIL, for example, if they ever do, or some scenario like that happens, they're not looking at pensions. They're not looking at current obligations. They're looking at, can we maximize our ROE in the utility industry by virtue of this sale? So I think it's apples to oranges, actually, because this is a public sector, municipal jobs going private, and you'll never get that kind of oversight back. You'll never get that kind of control. You'll never get that kind of protection for citizens who need it or for workers who need it. So I think it's very different. It's very difficult. I mean, we never got to that point here because there was never an offer to deal with us. But we weren't in favor of privatization no matter what because of everything that's lost. You don't have that when Sunoco buys some other company. I have, like I said, I've got private utilities buying private utilities, buying private utilities. I can't even keep track of who the current employer is. You don't have these same interests at stake there that you do here.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Councilman. No other questions for these witnesses? Gentlemen, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your
Thank you very
patience
much.
and your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Rob Wonderling. And Mr. White, did you have testimony, or are you just available to kind of see? You got actual testimony. All right, why don't you come up? Why don't you? How you doing?
Awesome.
Hey.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Rob Wonderling, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as the President and CEO of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. And I must say, sitting through this hearing to date, I am energized. And I think for the members of this august legislative body, individually as council members and as a whole, and this is a committee of a whole, this is an exhilarating time of opportunity. And I'm extremely impressed. Please don't cut me off when I'm throwing a verbal bouquet.
Mr. Wonderling, did you have a flashback to your Senate days?
There's a question in here somewhere. No, but in all seriousness, having been in your shoes, to take the time and to go through due diligence and to really examine all the possibilities, you should be commended. I also want to thank this body and the council president because in many respects this hearing is about the opportunities for jobs and for growth. And individually and collectively, you folks have been a great partner with our roadmap for growth. And in fact, to date, we've had 6 listening sessions in partnership with members of this body, another one scheduled this evening. It's just been absolutely outstanding because the coin of the realm is a job. And I think that is where there's common ground and why, Council President Clark, we're glad that you've called this hearing today. A couple of key data points to start. And the first data point, the first indicator is 1.3%. And that is really the total amount of employment that has declined, 1.3% in Pennsylvania since 2007 and 2012, the Great Recession, a decline of 1.3%. Another key and leading indicator is 259%. And that is how much employment in the oil and natural gas industry has increased in our Commonwealth over that same period of time. That's 15,000 new jobs. Now, obviously, the majority of these jobs have occurred in the Marcellus Shale portion of our Commonwealth in southwestern Pennsylvania in the northern tier, but the American Petroleum Institute reports that between now and 2020, approximately 100,000 jobs in Pennsylvania will grow to 220,000 jobs. We fully intend to work in partnership with this body, this government, to grab every single one of those jobs for the city of Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia region. We have to. Doing nothing is not an option. In the last several decades, 8 out of 10 major industry sectors in this city have lost jobs. During the past decade, we have seen a trend where thousands of Philadelphians have lost their jobs as our economy has transformed from one that's broad-based on manufacturing to one that's moved, appropriately so in some instances, to higher education, healthcare, leisure, and tourism. So really the question before us today, and I think the tone of the council president and having the committee of the whole in this resolution is just not the spirit, but the question that we all need to answer is how can we all work together, government, labor, the business sector, to reverse these local trends, to grab some of those predicted 100,000 new jobs for Pennsylvania, for this city, and for this region. How do we work to bring them back to Philadelphia? We think there's opportunity in energy and manufacturing. You do as well. This council participated in the Mayor's Manufacturers Task Force, which really was a partnership with the business community, with quasi-governmental entities, with City Council, and there are a number of good works that have come out of that. So in the spirit of having brief testimony and knowing that this legislative body likes definitive and precise steps of action, let me suggest 5 action steps for City Council to consider over the next 3 years to establish an energy hub for this city and this region. Action step number 1, let's expand the city's existing job creation tax credit, a program to incent manufacturing and energy companies to locate and create jobs in Philadelphia. The city offers employers in the Philadelphia job creation tax credits thanks to Councilman Good, in addition to the Pennsylvania Commonwealth's own tax credit program. These 2 programs offer a specified amount of tax credits off the city's business income and receipts tax as a company creates new jobs. Action item 1, and we're recommending that you consider expanding this tax credit for further manufacturing, energy sector, and downstream economic opportunities. This will be an incentive to attract companies to this city, as well as to entice and encourage existing companies to grow and expand here. Action step number 2, partner with the local energy industry. We've heard a bit about that throughout the testimony today. To promote the expansion of existing pipeline capacity to bring that shale gas from the Marcellus region to this city. You heard from Phil Rinaldi, who chairs our Energy Action Team earlier today, and we're working hard to break down the policy barriers and the political barriers to bring natural gas pipelines to the city of Philadelphia. And we think this legislative body, this City Council, has the authority, both legislatively and on a moral basis, to convene stakeholders, convene those that want to be proper stewards of the environment, convene citizens, convene organized labor, convene the business community, and work through, as Councilwoman Tasco mentioned earlier, perhaps in a retreat format, on how we can bring a pipeline to bring this natural resource to Philadelphia. That's an action item, and as our chairman of the Energy Action Committee, Phil Rinaldi, testified earlier, an action item that has to start now, because it takes 2 to 3 years to bring a pipeline to this city. Action item number 3, we really encourage City Council to bring a careful approach when you evaluate zoning. There's a large amount of residential and commercial development happening across this city, and that's a tremendously positive outcome. But we need to preserve large-scale industrial zoning. It's particularly important to do so along the lower Schuylkill River and portions of our Delaware River waterfront. Those are the locations that are closest to the needed infrastructure, like rail lines, ports, and highways. These large-scale tracts are vital. It's a vital component for us to attract new companies to this region. We commend one of your colleagues, Councilman Heenan, who had the leadership to raise this issue during the Mayor's Manufacturing Task Force. And again, this council can grab this as an action-oriented agenda item to make sure it happens now. Action item number 4, and our friends from organized labor just touched on this in their last testimony, a collaboration that would set a local ordinance and state law that will provide steps for the Philadelphia School District to implement more vocational and technical training programs for citizens in the city of Philadelphia. The school district has just begun to seek partnerships that are defined to bring industry in the energy and manufacturing space, bring their curriculum in an applied learning environment to our young Philadelphians. City Council can play a significant role in making that so, not just in the school district of Philadelphia, but with the Community College of Philadelphia as well. I had the distinct honor to represent the business and civic community on the search process that brought us Dr. Guy Generals, our new president of the Community College of Philadelphia, and he's all about stacking credentials. He's all about finding a way in working with industry, and particularly the energy and manufacturing sector, to create pathways short of a 2- and 4-year degree that would have a Philadelphia employable in this growing energy and manufacturing economy now. And this City Council can clearly take that action step. And then finally, action step number 5, and that truly is to engage in further public discussions with UIL concerning PGW. Now look, we really respect the role that this body has on all matters that come before you. And it's not the role of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce or the Energy Action Team or virtually anybody else to weigh in on the specifics of this transaction. But we do think that by continuing a public process, to have the corporation in question come here and answer, or at least be called to answer, many of the same questions that members of this body have been asking all afternoon, I think is a strong public process that strengthens the bonds of the democratic process for all the citizens of Philadelphia. And most importantly, during this critical time as we work to move private capital into the greater Philadelphia region, it sends a strong and clarion signal to investors not in this region that clearly this legislative body takes this work very seriously. Again, not for us to impose that, but to gently suggest in a highly diplomatic way that a public process that brings closure to the matter we think is warranted. We have every reason to believe that we can become an energy hub. An energy hub isn't just a confederation of economic actors growing an economy and providing 10,000 jobs. An energy hub truly sets the price of natural gas in the marketplace. Philadelphia could do this. We have no doubt that we can do this, and we look forward to working with members of this council individually, with our council president and city council to make it so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Not that you're going anywhere, nor am I, but over these several years that you've been here, it's really a pleasure working with you on the school district issue. I look forward to continue working relationship with you in the chamber. Thank you. That's right.
Council President, thank you very much for inviting PGW here today. I have submitted, my name's Craig White. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Philadelphia Gas Works. I've submitted written testimony. I will summarize it today, and I am certainly here to take any questions you may have. Joining me here is also our board chairman, David Seltzer, and David has also similar, or he has comments as well, and I'm sure he'll take your questions as well. However, I'm going to start, even though my board chair is here. I'm going to lead off. And I want to first, again, say thank you to this body, because without this type of discussion, many of the issues facing PGW would not be highlighted as they will today and in the coming days and weeks. With respect to the focus of this hearing, PGW's ability to support the Energy Hub, I'm going to focus on that. But before I get there, I want to give a little background on PGW, where the past, present, and future will take us. I would like to preface that I do agree that the Philadelphia region is an ideal location for an energy hub, and not the least of which is the fact that we are in close proximity to the Marcellus Shale region. We have 60% of the country's population within an hour's drive, and certainly this region needs the critical demand that an energy hub brings. Philadelphia Gas Works and the city of Philadelphia obviously will both benefit handsomely if energy demand is brought here, because it brings industry and certainly brings jobs. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I too, like Phil Rinaldi, I am part of the Energy Action Team, and no one has really mentioned some of the members of the Energy Action Team. They include such entities as Quaker Chemical, Dow Chemical, Aqua America, Sunoco Logistics, Holt Logistics, PSEG, Braskem, Exelon, Philadelphia Energy Solutions, UGI, PGW, and others. So there's quite a cross-section of energy and the folks that I didn't mention in the financial world and so forth that are part of the Energy Action Team. Taking a moment to look at where PGW has been, I'm going back to where I started with the company, because that's where my statistics begin. But in 1981, we moved about 74 billion cubic feet of natural gas, and the typical residential customer used 129 MCF a year. Those statistics today pale in comparison. We're down about 35%. In 2013, we had 49 BCF of gas, and the typical residential heating customer is now only using 83 MCF a year. So the issue there is obviously as usage drops off, we have less units to spread our costs over, and therefore what has happened over time, our rates have gone up. Now, what have we done to militate against that? Certainly, we've looked at cost controls. And just to give you a bit of an idea on that, our payroll expense has been relatively flat, if not flat, for most of the last 10 years. We're at about $10 million a year for our 1,650 people. As far as our employees, in 2004, we had 1,760 employees. Today, we have 1,650. At the end of 2013, we had 1,658. When I started with the company, we had 2,825 employees. So there's been a lot of cost cutting. This isn't something new at PGW. We have been doing things that have cut costs. We have never gone the route of laying people off. What we have done is we have shrunk through attrition. And I stand corrected. There was probably one instance that back when we had a turnaround firm operating the company that I believe 15 people were laid off. But in my 35 years, I can't recall any other instance where anyone was laid off at PGW. We've shrunk through attrition. And as I've said, we've reduced that number down to 1,658. And today we are doing more cast iron main replacement than ever in the history of the company. I'll get into that momentarily. Our bad debt in 2003 was 11%. It's about half of that now at 5.9%. Healthcare costs in 2004 were only $33 million. They're now $43 million in 2013. And fortunately for us, we went to self-insurance, and in the last 3 years, our healthcare costs have only gone up by 3% a year. Talk to anyone in the healthcare world, 3% is outstanding. So we have been able to cut costs in that regard. Our capital spending in the period 2004 to 2012 has been $622 million. That's primarily replacing pipe and maintaining our gas plants for the future. Our total debt payments over that same period, $954 million of interest and principal. Hence, we've reduced a situation where we were about close to 85% leveraged, 85% debt, 15% equity. We're now down to about 70% debt, 25% equity in round numbers. And we are moving in the right direction, and hence one of the things that we did receive very favorably recently, and I think you mentioned it, Council President, is that our bond rating fell to, or increased, not fell, but increased to A-. So that's real good news. That reduces our cost of borrowing, and of course you know that borrowing becomes part of our rates when we go in for rate relief. We do have the highest rates in the state, and that is not something that doesn't escape me as president of the company. We have the highest rates. And over the 10-year period ending 2010, we have received $170 million in rate relief from the Public Utility Commission. In addition to that, we anticipate a $40 million rate request in 2018. Now, the only thing that reduces that request in 2018 is either further cost cutting or revenue enhancements. In other words, increased sale of natural gas. With all this said, we are very interested in the Philadelphia Energy Hub because Energy Hub, to me, means business. It means industry, it means jobs, and more importantly, for ratepayers and for Philadelphia Gas Works' financial stability, it certainly is important that business be brought into the region. We obviously have constraints on PGW that hamper our ability to always participate in business opportunities, and we've discussed these constraints not only with council from time to time over the years, but the Solicitor's Office, the Gas Commission, and of course others within the administration. Council's resolution lays out a method or a way in which PGW can attract new customers. And as I said, that Energy Hub is very important to us. And I'm going to list the same 6 items that were listed by Concentric. And quite frankly, I'm happy to report we're not only dipping our toe, we're aggressively in every one of these 6 categories, aggressively today in every one of these categories. And I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about them. With respect to more Marcellus gas, you may recall it wasn't that long ago that there was discussion of PGW not purchasing Marcellus gas. But of course, as the article in the paper read today, accurately, it was pointed out that we have a least cost procurement requirement from the PUC that we buy the least cost gas that we can get our hands on. And I'm happy to report over the last 2 years, we have saved customers approximately $35 million in gas costs by accessing Marsalis supply. Now, that does not represent a large percentage of our supply, but nonetheless, the cheaper gas supply in Marsalis, when we are able to get it, we do save money. And when I say we are able to get it, we have to be able to get it within existing pipeline contracts, or in some instances, we get it on what they call interruptible capacity on interstate pipelines, capacity that's not necessarily under contract with anyone. One of the things that I will say is that we look every day at opportunities to maybe reconfigure or unwind capacity that we have today in the Gulf, and we'd like to move it into the Marsalis. But we have a counterparty. It's an interstate pipeline. Interstate pipelines say, we like that contract. We don't necessarily want you, PGW, to unwind that contract because we won't make money from that. However, the world is changing. Exporting is going to happen out of the Gulf, and some of that capacity, that exporting of LNG, that capacity may become much more valuable for that exportation. We don't need that capacity for that purpose. We need more Marsalis gas. So we're going to be looking to reconfigure in the future to give ourselves greater access to Marsalis supply. It's certainly not going to be done through PGW building another pipeline, because we do not have the $2 billion it will take to do that type of endeavor. The next item on the list was expanding the LNG. And it wasn't all that many years ago that we replaced a very antiquated modified cascade system with a new expander liquefier. The expander liquefier uses less than a percent of fuel. And what that means is when you liquefy natural gas, you typically have to run reciprocating engines that require a lot of energy, in most cases natural gas, to proceed through that process. We have a very efficient turbine, and when we liquefy at a very low cost to the customer. The one fallback to that particular piece of equipment is the fact that we do not have the ability to use it year-round. At some times in the year, we cannot use that capacity. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to expand that program, or expand our capability to liquefy. And you ask yourself, well, why would you do that all of a sudden? Well, first of all, back in 1981, when we needed every bit of the capacity in our LNG tanks, every bit of the space in the 2 tanks in Richmond, there's 25 million gallons in each tank. We needed every bit of it. Today, we only need a half of that. We only need half of that. We need 25 million gallons, basically. That other space, we've been filling that space and trucking it through existing facilities we have for the purpose of long-haul trucking and for use in freshwater pumps at drilling sites. That's what it's being taken out for. Our job, we're just selling it. We're selling it freight on board at Philadelphia's Richmond plant. And of course, the buyer is then taking that to the marketplace. But I'm just sharing, that's my understanding of the market. What we believe is, we believe that market could rise, could double. And when I say double, right now, in this past year, we sold a little over 1 BCF. We believe that market can go 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 BCF. Now, let me put that in perspective for the Energy Hub. First of all, every bit of that liquefaction that we could put in that tank, we can probably do within our existing capacity today. So our demand for LNG is not going to be much of a driver to build the interstate pipeline capacity that Rob just spoke of. The driver for that interstate pipeline capacity will be industry and new business. Now, you say, okay, what else are you doing, PGW? Well, we're involved in combined heat and power. We're looking to add new customers. We're 83% saturated in the city of Philadelphia on residential heating customers. That other 17 is an opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, this huge drop-off in our usage over the years, the drop-off that I talked about early in my testimony, early in my remarks, we're just on an annual basis replacing what we're losing. We're not gaining on it. We are replacing what we're losing. However, the fundamentals are here today for change. And the fundamentals are obviously low-cost Marsalis gas. But people have to be willing to site in Philadelphia to really bring that natural gas to the marketplace. Interstate pipelines will not build capacity unless they have a market. They don't build it on spec. Talk to any one of them. Call them in here. Put them on the stand. They'd be happy to talk to us. But they will not build a pipeline on spec. They'll build it if you're going to pay for it. And you've got to make binding commitments for that capacity. So we're doing things on the LNG front, but it's not going to really move the needle for the energy hub. In order to move the needle, we need greater demands for natural gas. The next item was to facilitate the development of the natural gas vehicle market. And I think Concentric accurately pointed out that there's financial risks in doing that. As a matter of fact, this year alone, we've added over 20 vehicles to our fleet. We had original plans to add many more than that, but there wasn't a business case that supported it because, quite frankly, we've done a good job of reducing the amount of driving we do by tightening up our serviceman's routes. And therefore, the amount of vehicle transportation isn't as great as it was in the past, and therefore there's not as much savings as there was in the past. But the point is, natural gas vehicles is a market that could very well take off with a cheaper supply of natural gas. It's an ideal application for fleets, and we believe it's something worth pursuing. But it brings, as everything else, it brings financial risk to the company. Collaboration on the workforce. I know that's been a discussion quite a bit today. And there's quite a few things we have done just as PGW. We are involved in not only the Philadelphia Youth Network, but in helping develop curriculum at the Philadelphia Community College and Temple and the Philadelphia Academies. So we're already working on this, but we look to expand that. We look for opportunities because the workers of the future have to be trained. They have to see that there's opportunity. So these are things that we're already delving into and have been for quite a few years. And as far as promoting energy efficiency, we have the largest program in the state of Pennsylvania. It's about $11 million, and we have no shareholders, so it's coming from our ratepayers. And the reason they're investing that $11 million is because we're able to reduce usage, and much of that $11 million goes to your low income. We're able to reduce usage that they themselves are paying for. And what it's doing to PGW is it's reducing our revenue streams. But nevertheless, we're doing it. And this is something that we're looking at very closely, but it's something that we are invested in, and we're working very hard to keep on the as part of the PGW offerings. PGW's future role, we stand ready. Obviously, we think that we have the workforce, and much of what was discussed earlier today about succession planning and being prepared, we've actually staffed up over the last 6 months preparing for a potential retirement. In 2001, we had a significant give-back contract, and everyone in the company knew what was coming. We had 143 people eligible to retire and 105 left. Today, we have 400 eligible to retire, and we have 105 that have indicated that they're leaving. Of that 105, 86 are union, and 23 or 24, whatever the number is, are non-union jobs. So we stand prepared for that change that could occur. But as it stands, we have 105, and we have a lot of folks that, as Keith said, they don't have a lot of years, and PGW is a pretty good place to work. So I think a lot of these folks are considering hanging in with the company. We have no shareholders. We have no deep pockets to pick. And the reason we have the governance that we have is by necessity. And I'm the first one to say that. We have it by necessity. There's no doubt that governance has to protect. You are the one shareholder, sir. You are the one shareholder. Yes, we have. You can say that we have one shareholder, and that's all of our ratepayers. But we have, and that's an excellent point, because if we do something that brings risk into the mix, the only people that pay for that are our shareholders if we make the wrong decision. If we make the right decision, the only people that benefit from that are our ratepayers.
Right.
So if we save money on natural gas, it goes right back to our ratepayers.
It's called incentive to make the right decisions.
Incentive to make the right decision, yes. But certainly, we fully understand that responsibility of the customer, and we fully appreciate the fact that we have governance designed to protect the customer. And that governance is obviously has an acceptable level of tolerance, and that's what we operate with, that acceptable level of tolerance. So, I can see where we're going here. I want to close up. What I will say in closing is the fact that PGW stands ready to support, but we have to do it within the current municipal governance. If there's future discussions about where that can go, PGW stands ready to assist in that process.
Thank you.
So that ends my comments. I'll be happy to take any questions.
And thank you for doing a good job. I remember, because I've been here for a while, some might say too long, but I can remember times when there were some very challenging times at PGW, and folks were struggling to pay the bills, and you guys have done a great turnaround, so I want to commend you for that great work, and we'll look to take it to the next level.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Tasco.
I have a couple of questions. We talked about the Energy Hub, but we have a lot of new construction going on in Philadelphia. How much of that new construction uses gas?
The vast majority.
The vast majority?
Yes.
What do you do to encourage, as you hear that a new building is new companies coming in, a new building is going up, or new houses are going up? What is the action of PGW to see that you get that market?
Well, we have a very experienced and trained marketing department, and one of the things that we knew we had to do a number of years ago was turn that customer experience to a much quicker and much more expedited experience. And we had to do it for contractors and commercial developers. So we've gone to great lengths to build relationships to enable folks to install gas service in an efficient manner. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, old housing stock gets removed and it gets replaced by new housing stock with much more efficient furnaces, much better insulation, and so forth. So in many instances, a lot of the growth you see, for instance, in Northern Liberties, a lot of houses are being raised, and then more efficient units are being replaced replacing the older inefficient units. We do have gas to oil conversion incentives and things of that nature to encourage folks to move from other fuels. But certainly the marketplace right now is driving the natural gas decision because natural gas is plentiful, it's cheap, and it's perceived by the public and by commercial developers to be in that status for many years to come.
So we're getting our fair share from the commercial developers?
We get a number of commercial developments, but obviously the Center City area is a difficult lift for us. We have a Center City steam loop, and many of your large office buildings are on the Center City steam loop. Now, we do talk to them on an ongoing basis to consider combined heat and power, and we have had some conversions. But certainly not every applicable conversion in the city has made that move. The challenge for us is, in most cases, there's a big first cost, and we have to help contribute to that first cost. We're in a position to, not in a position to loan money, but we are in a position to do certain things within our municipal governance to assist in that conversion. And we've worked on some very large projects over time. In addition to that, we rely on the Act 129 contributions as well. So we're doing a lot of things within PGW to help commercial businesses find money to help support their investments.
One other question. You said earlier that PGW has the highest rates in the state, and let's break this down. Your costs for gas supply are very consistent with your peers in the state, but your customer responsibility program is one of the largest, if not the largest, in the state. So aren't PGW's relatively higher rates due in large part to the fact that we have a lot of poor people in Philadelphia, and we do provide them with needed assistance in keeping gas service in their homes?
I would agree with that. I think in the large part, I think it's $183 on average per customer. That is part of that universal service charge. That's the CRP, it's the senior citizen discount. I also would point out that due to our older system, our proximity to front foundation walls, we're the closest in the country on average to the front foundation wall. So we spend more money, obviously, to maintain our system, which is embedded in our rates. So the entire delta, or the entire difference between other companies' distribution charges and PGW's is not necessarily all made up by that $183, but that is a large part of it.
Concentric states in its report that although not necessary, a public-private partnership would allow PGW and a private partner to share some of the risks associated with participating in competitive energy markets such as expanded LNG sales. Is that a direction PGW was planned to go in? And if so, why? And why not?
Well, we would look to take whatever margins we can gain and shift those to our customers, and that's what we do. We have no, we have no shareholders, so it's not going out as dividends to anyone other than our city payment. So if you bring a public-private partnership in who invest their capital, they're going to want to take the lion's share or a good portion of the profit. We believe that PGW should build that facility as we have in the past. We've built 2 facilities now. The latest facilities that are out there are modular. We can buy them and basically have them assembled on site. And the investment that we would make would enable us to generate additional LNG revenues, which we currently drop directly to our bottom line. And just to give you more specifics, we dropped $4 million to our bottom line, and we contributed $2 million to the GCR with the expanded LNG program of a little over a BCF last year.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. White, the 2 criticisms or concerns that I've heard is that under its current structure, PGW has 2 important limitations. One is that you cannot access capital, the nature of being a public utility. And second is that the nature of your governance structure means that your reaction time is slow. Could you answer those 2 issues?
I'd be happy to. We're, as I said, we're 70% leveraged right now. So we have about $1 billion in debt. And, if the company was sold, that's one of the discussion points that they talk about, having to defease that $1 billion. Did I say 1 million? I meant to say $1 billion.
You said $1 billion with a B. I heard a B.
Okay, very good. And obviously, today, with the efficiencies of the company, we're generating about $35 million a year for our capital program with internally generated funds. But we have to borrow the rest of the funds that we use on our capital budget. And our capital budget is somewhere around $80 million. And then, of course, we have this DISC mechanism that throws another $22 million in there for infrastructure replacement. So as far as borrowing is concerned, we have to be very careful. If we start to borrow indiscriminately like we did in the past, we'll be right back in the soup we were in not that long ago, which was one step above junk bond status, making a phone call to the city administration asking to forgive the $18 million, which is what I participated in about 8 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, whenever it was. So yes, we have to be a little careful how we borrow. Do we have the ability to borrow? Absolutely. We have the ability to go to the capital markets and borrow. And probably what we would do is borrow $150 million every 3 years to expand programs and use about $50 million a year. But you can see very quickly, you start to move that 70% back up to 75, 80, and so forth. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get this company down to about a 60-40 debt to equity, which would bring our interest costs down. Your second point about the governance is, and I've said this many times, the governance in a municipal environment has to be risk averse. There's no shareholders to take a hit. So we have the management agreement, we have the home rule charter, we have rules that have been, or orders that have been promulgated by the Philadelphia Gas Commission, and we even have the state constitution, which limits our ability to partner, joint venture, lend our credit, or even in some instances, and there's some speculation as to whether we can do this, we may not be able to use municipal employees in a commercial venture. So in other words, a municipal employee at our LNG plant may not be able to be used in a commercial venture at our LNG plant. And this was an issue that came up when we were negotiating with Hess for an import terminal about 10 years ago. So there are definite legitimate reasons why we have all the governance we have, but does it make us nimble? No, it doesn't. You know, we spend a lot of resources internally addressing oversight, and the oversight is extensive. We have a board of directors we go to before we file our capital and operating budget, before we file a rate proceeding with the with the Public Utility Commission. We have operating and capital budget proceedings with the Gas Commission. We have capital budget oversight at City Council. We have a plethora of items, and it does hamper our ability, there's no doubt. But, you know, let me reiterate, it's there for a reason in a municipal environment.
Okay, you know, my concern has been throughout this process that I'm not interested in seeing PGW sold to basically operate as PGW. I would see no reason to do that. But the idea that PGW would be able to pick up a lot of capital investment to be used to improving the infrastructure, to develop its ability as an energy hub is attractive to me. And the issue with UIL, unfortunately, that we have not really fleshed out because there's a time limitation in this contract and a constraint, at least I understand and they understand that there's a constraint that we cannot negotiate past, is that we began to ask some questions, and they're not here, unfortunately, but, you know, the ability for us to go forward and see what their ability to be flexible, to amend, to provide some new offers, I think is important. I'm sorry, Council President, can I continue? I'm taking, if you tell me no, I'll stop.
You put me on the spot, sir.
All right.
No, you were wrapping up.
I'm wrapping up.
You were wrapping, yeah.
I'll wrap up with a story. Sorry.
You're no longer a freshman.
2.5 years ago, I got a visit from KEPCO, Korea Electric Power Company. It's $154 billion in assets. They were coming from State College, interested in PGW, interested in Philadelphia, interested in Energy Hub. And I had extensive conversations with them. And when I was in Korea a month ago, I met with the Vice Minister of Trade, Industry, and Energy for their global energy operations. And therefore, I come out of this with a very different perspective on the opportunity for Philadelphia as an energy hub. And I know there's different experts and have different opinions, but, you know, my concern has been around the fact that I would like to see that in the conversation with UIL, they have a long-term plan, a smart plan, the wherewithal and the commitment to that plan to develop Philadelphia to its fullest capability. And to that regard, if they cannot do that, or they don't have the, you know, the footprints of evidence that they intend to do that, I'm going to be concerned not to have a deal and forgo other opportunities. So that's more like a statement, but I wanted to share that, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to have a meeting that I'm co-hosting that started at 6 o'clock, so needless to say, I'm a little late. I'm going to have to, if it's okay with the members, allow the succession in terms of sitting at the table along with the chair of the commission. I asked to come up, but I do want to get a couple of quick ones in before I leave. Very short, very short. And there were actually a couple of things touched on it. I do want to say that the Energy Action Team, which I've recently become a member of, and thank you for those that asked me to be a part of that process. I think it's probably because it's primarily business people, but I think it's a little too pro-sale. I don't think there's enough balance there to give the conversation a little and then maybe I'm wrong, because I've only been at a couple of conferences.
So organized labor, as well as other elected officials, are members of the Energy Action Team.
All right,
The Action Team doesn't set policy.
I understand that.
I presented testimony today on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. What the Energy Action Team has been doing for the last 2.5 years
I know.
is marketing to about 2,000 companies from around the world to come to Philadelphia to set up shop at energy and manufacturing-related activities.
But you referenced it in your testimony, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So when you put something in your testimony, you're representing a particular entity, and you reference this in your last question about the potential sale. That's just an observation as a person that's attended a couple of meetings.
Right.
So if you're going to get in the game with respects to, and it's not a criticism, I'm just
no, I understand.
making a simple observation. As a member of the action team, if there's going to be a discussion about sale versus sale, we can have a little more balance on the actual organization. I think that generally it would be a lot better. But I'm new to the game. You don't tell me how to do my business. I shouldn't be trying to attempt to tell you how to do yours. The issue about the customer decline, and unfortunately across the city, we not only decline in the customer base in terms of the lack of decline of industry and companies, and particularly residential. But right now we're actually seeing a small uptick in the number of customer base as it relates to residential. As you know, across the city, we're experiencing at least around the collar of the center city, we're experiencing a significant increase in new housing starts we know that by virtue of our increase in transfer tax. If that trend continues, will it make a measurable increase in your customer base? And I ask that because we had a similar conversation when the water department was looking at raising rates, and they talked a direct correlation in the fact that they have an infrastructure that has to accommodate the entire city, but there's so many disconnected laterals in that particular case where there's literally an infrastructure that's required, and there might be 2 properties on the block, but you still have the cost of infrastructure. So I'm assuming it's similar to PGW. If there was an aggressive push and a continued aggressive push in terms of bringing on new customers, particularly on the residential aspect, would that enhance measurably your opportunity to be a more viable company?
I think from our standpoint, I mean, new customers are certainly vital to the future of the company. I mean, we would be in a death spiral otherwise if we didn't add new customers. The problem for us is that if you assume a heater lasts 20 years, when people take out a 20-year-old heater, that technology was probably 80% efficient, and by the time it's 20 years old, it's probably 50% efficient. They put a new one in today, it's 90% efficient.
Right.
So
that's part 2, because that's what happened to us with the water department. Yeah. They're being more efficient, they promote it, and there's less money coming in, but I'm sorry.
No, we've lost a lot of firm load, and we're trying to replace that with other more creative types of load, like natural gas vehicles, like combined heat and power, and certainly the LNG trucking business. So we're trying to replace what we've already lost with other revenue streams to reduce the rate burden. And there was a lot of talk today about PGW generating dollars in different ways. Any dollars we generate go right back to the ratepayers. They don't go to the city's general fund. They go to the ratepayers.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but comes out of the same pocket as the resident.
Instead of paying taxes,
it doesn't matter.
Gas bill, right?
Either paying utilities or taxes, so it's the same thing. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Nielsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. White, we've heard a lot today, and we've seen a lot of commercials leading up to today on TV, and it has a concern of the citizens within the city about the main replacement. Can you talk about the main replacement? Why does PGW's main replacement program take longer than what UIL is proposing on TV? They ran the commercials to make everybody think they're in grave danger, and they said they can fix it without raising our gas rates. Can you explain that to us, please?
Well, I can attempt to answer the second part. Let me start with the first part. We've been doing approximately 18 miles a year of the 1,500-mile inventory that we have of cast iron. We also have about 400 miles of unprotected steel, which means not cathodically protected, so it's subject to corrosion. Of the 18 miles, what we do is we prioritize what we call the highest risk main in the city of Philadelphia, and we remove that 18 miles. With the legislation of a few years ago, we were able to supplement that program with what we call our DISC mechanism. It's a distribution system improvement charge. And in Philadelphia, we charge dollar for dollar to the customer. We spend $22 million this year, the customer gets charged $22 million. Now here's the second part of your question. When a UIL does the same type of thing, or an investor-owned, let's use just a generic investor-owned, they amortize that $22 million over an extended period of time. So you may only pay 10% as the DISC mechanism. You may only pay $2.2 million in that first year, where for PGW you're spending $22 million. In the second year, you're at $4.4 million. In the third year, you're at $6.6. Eventually, there's a crossover. It's like buying a house. If you buy it cash, you pay $80,000 for it. You buy it with a 30-year loan, you'll pay $200,000. But you don't necessarily have the $80,000 to lay down, so you buy it with a mortgage. So what you have with a investor-owned, you have almost a mortgage concept where those dollars are impacting you over an extended period of time. And then eventually there will be a crossover where it will be more expensive. But at that time, you would expect that company to have cost-cutting measures in place or synergies. And you know, one of the things I think Keith Holmes is very concerned about, and not necessarily something that I believe is necessarily going to hit our field forces, but when you're taken over or you're combined with another company, there's synergies. And the synergies are another word for saying you can combine computer systems, you can, why do you need two people buying natural gas when you can have one person buying natural gas? Or why do you need two accountants when you can have one? You still need your distribution workers, you still need your field service workers, and you still need your gas plant operators. But no, you know, the long and short of it is, we certainly have a different business model for a municipal than you have for an investor-owned.
Earlier, we had testimony from Mr. Rinaldi, and he was speaking about capacity issues in our lines. What role can PGW play to help Mr. Rinaldi getting more gas and getting his issue solved?
Well, the role we can play as a municipal is we do what we do today, and that is try to add customers to our system. If a large manufacturer was interested in siting in Philadelphia and they wanted to, in most cases, these large entities will buy natural gas from a third party and they'll just transport it across our system. So they won't necessarily buy the gas supply from us, which is fine with PGW and its customers, because the cost of gas is a pass-through in rates. We charge nothing for it other than what we pay for it. So if a large entity comes into Philadelphia and we can help encourage that, we certainly will participate in that way. What we don't have is we don't have a lot of seed dollars to help that, to assist that. We don't have the capital to necessarily put on the table to facilitate large capital investments. An investor-owned may have that. A company with capitalization that's significant.
So a company like Mr. Rinaldi's would need 5 or 6 companies just like his to partner up, because PGW doesn't have the capital or the capability to put that kind of money for it?
I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. I think you're going to have to see many big entities stepping up for, committing to natural gas. And the only way a 36-inch pipeline will get built from an interstate pipeline is if there's about 1 BCF a day of usage. Now, just to give you an idea, we're only using 50 BCF a year in Philadelphia, PGW. We're using 50 BCF a year. A 36-inch high-pressure pipeline can bring about 1,150,000 MCF of gas to the city of Philadelphia every day. That's what you run fertilizer plants with. That's what you run gas to liquids plants with. That's what you run electric generating facilities with. That's what you run chemical plants with, and so on and so forth. So those entities have to step up, have to be cited here, and that's the reason for the summit. The summit is to attempt to attract that type of interest into Philadelphia, which has a great workforce. We have great people here. We have, we have a blue-collar workforce. We have tremendous educational facilities. So we really believe at the Chamber and in the Energy Action Team that we've got all the components here to make it happen. How PGW participates in that as a municipal, we have to do it within our governance and within our financial constraints.
Last question,
Councilman, I
Mr.
got
Chairman.
3 people lined up here.
Well, I just want to be just like everybody else and get that last one in.
Okay, well, wait, hold.
You mentioned training. I just want to, it came up like 5 times. If you could just tell how he trains, he's got a state-of-the-art training facility, and I snuck that right in under your bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I'm okay. I'll get him later.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilman O'Neill?
Yes, I'm just going to, this is a follow-up question, Craig, from what Councilman Nielsen said, a little more focused on the DISC program itself, because during the briefings that I attended in the process of analyzing